Hey, what's up? It is the Nick Handley Show, Nick Handley Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. I always want to say a radio station, TJ. I always like, and we're on this radio. We're on the Husker Max YouTube channel. That's where we are. And of course, you can always check out any of the shows on the Husker Max YouTube channel, whether you want to get episode number 1, where I was just a mere novice at this podcast, and I just said hello to everybody and told them everything I was up to where we're now having exciting guests, and my old friend and one of my favorite producers ever in the world, TJ Henning, as we join you every week. You can check out all of those episodes. This is episode number 14, I believe.
Yeah, 13 or 14, I was going to guess. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So look at this, going strong. 14 episodes. If you missed any of them, again, go back to the Husker Max YouTube channel. You can always stay up to date on the latest podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Nick Handley, OMA. Boy, TJ, boy. First of all, how are you? How's your weekend? Before we really get into this thing, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Staying warm. Yesterday went out with my parents and wife out to catch a little dome basketball in person.
You are such a hoop head. I love it.
Went down to Crete and used my uncle's tickets, and they lost a 2-point game, but it was fun to be. I haven't seen a basketball game in their new auditorium stadium, whatever they built. Okay. They got that black basketball court, so that's pretty cool. Then the Haddock Center there. And then we had a nice steak dinner out there in Crete. They got a little every third Saturday of the month. They got a cheap steak dinner night. So that's your local local establishment in Crete. It was charming, man. It was
I know you like yourself a nice cheap steak dinner. You know, some of us go for the reputation, and sometimes that comes with a price. But if you can throw a good deal at my man TJ, he will take you up on it.
Hey, yeah, my uncle was like, "Hey, every third Saturday in Crete, they got steak, salad, baked potato, dessert. You know, they got it all for just $16. So
hell yeah,
great. So yeah, it was fun to do that. Both my parents grew up around Crete. They went to Crete High School. So yeah, it was fun to be back there for a day yesterday.
Did you clean the plate off?
Oh yeah,
for sure. You did. Yeah. I figured you probably did.
Yeah.
I would like to think if Dana College and Blair still existed, TJ would have at least taken in 2 Dana games.
Yeah, I think so too. I probably could have done that as well. How was your weekend going?
Pretty good. It was a non-hockey weekend. By the way, shout out to the Mavs sweeping another sweep. By the way, as they took care of the Miami Redhawks on the road. So they have won. They're 5-1 in the new year, but they were
above 500.
Yes, above 500, starting to receive some top 20 votes. Don't look at the pairwise rankings because it's not worth your time yet. But yeah, starting to play some good hockey, so that was good. But we didn't have hockey here, so. Yesterday. So my wife has been traveling for work. And so when she got back, I think the little guy is, and I'm not talking about myself. I think the little guy, the 4-year-old Reese is feeling, a little bit uneasy because he's been kind of a single parent kid here lately.
Yeah.
And so we spent a lot of time. We did a lot of fun Reese things yesterday. Yeah. So that was good. We did, we got to have a movie night. We had Sundays. That was cool. I've never seen Sonic. Have you seen Sonic?
I have not yet.
There's 3 of them.
Well, yeah, I know about that. Yeah.
Didn't know there were 3 of them.
I love playing the video game on Sega Genesis when I was younger. That's for sure.
Yeah, it made me want to play the video game. But so we did watch the first one. I have a feeling Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 are in the near future.
Yeah.
So that's good. But yeah, it was a good weekend. Gosh, what did we do Friday? I'm trying to remember. Jeez, I feel like oh my gosh, Friday that was the big thing. We went to Seinfeld and Jim Gaffigan. Now Reese didn't go.
Oh. Nice. How was that?
Great. It was. Now I already knew what to expect out of Jerry Seinfeld. Saw him a long time ago at the Orpheum, long time ago, and he's fantastic. And you go in knowing that. I've only seen a little bit of Jim Gaffigan stand up, but so when I talk about my experience on Friday, a lot of people think that I'm saying Jim Gaffigan was better than Jerry Seinfeld. Not necessarily the case. But I just didn't know exactly what to expect. Jim Gaffigan was fantastic. He was so good.
Yeah, he's
and,
great.
and Jerry was Jerry, man. Jerry Seinfeld was Jerry Seinfeld. He is the GOAT for a reason. He did not disappoint. But Jim Gaffigan was fantastic. Yeah. All in all, it was a great show. It looked like it was sold out. We were way up in the nosebleeds and not have an empty seat next to us. So it was very, very good.
Were they telling? So when I saw that it was both of them together, like, did they tell jokes together at one point, or did just one go and then the other went?
It was funny. We were trying to guess who was going to go first. Well, this is still Jerry Seinfeld, so he will be the last one. And I even mentioned this to my wife and her parents that we went there with, and I had said, I wonder if they'll come out together, and they did. So they came out together, kind of talked about why they were on stage together, and why they were both doing a tour together because they're friends. They're both in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did do this little bit where they were each going to do their material at the same time. And it was pretty funny. Like, it goes on for like a minute and a half. It was very funny. But then it was Jim Gaffigan, then Jerry Seinfeld. And they went on for a long time. I would say at least both of them had an hour set at least. And then the opener, and I forget his name. He was pretty good too. He was pretty funny. So yeah, great show. I know a lot of people had made plans, made their way out there, and it was very good. So yeah, we did the Seinfeld Gaffigan on Friday. It was Reese Day yesterday, and then today it was unfortunately Husker Hoops Day.
Yeah. I've seen Jerry when he was in Lincoln at the Lead Center, and then I've seen Jim Gaffigan when he was at the Pinewood Bowl. Probably almost like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've seen.
Did he do the Hot Pocket? Did he do the Hot Pocket bit then?
He usually talks a lot about food.
There's no Hot Pocket one. I felt robbed of that one, but yeah.
Having watched all of his stand-ups, he does love getting into food, and he's now skinny. I don't know if he talked about that because that was on his latest Hulu one.
He talked about his man boobs. Said he wears a blazer now, so that hides his man boobs.
Or Ozempic? Did he mention Ozempic?
He did not. No.
Okay, so all right. Well, if you want to hear the Ozempic stuff, go to his latest thing on Hulu, Nick. So there you go.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about this before too, and this was kind of cool. And we talk to our listeners and our viewers about everything going on in sports, but I also wanted to mention if any of you missed the announcement too. I felt like this was a big part of my week. You asked me how my week went, and I will be doing a bulk of the Nebraska baseball games on the Husker Sports Network, which I'm very, very excited about doing. To be doing that with Ben McLaughlin, my good friend Ben McLaughlin, who I couldn't be more excited to be back in the booth with him. And then also David Gustafson, who, hey, David and I go way back as well. So there's going to be a lot of great continuity in that booth. Of course, the reason I'm doing the majority of the games is because unfortunately our other good friend, dear friend, Greg Sharp, again, just he's fighting the good fight right now, and his focus right now is his health and just being able to be there with his family. They got some big things coming up, so obviously our thoughts and prayers continue to be with Greg Sharp, but I will be handling a lot of the baseball responsibility that unfortunately Greg will not be a part of. But it's going to be this is an important year for all of us, because I think we want to make sure that we're making him proud. That's all. And I'm going to be helping out doing some sports nightlies. I cannot wait this Wednesday. Going to be doing that with Greg. We're doing an hour before the Nebraska USC basketball game. I can't wait to do that, because Greg is not only a friend, but he has been a big brother in this business for me. He is the guy that he's usually one of the first, if not the very first, that I would share good news or bad news with when it came to this line of work. And he is someone that is always dropping what he's doing to make sure that he knows that I'm there for him. So that's why I want to make sure I do that very, very well, but also to have the opportunity to do some of these shows with him makes it even that much better. And of course, Jessica as well. We already did a show last week together, and I thought it went very well. So excited to be back doing it. Excited to be back on the Husker Sports Network, and cannot wait for baseball, which, by the way, TJ, less than a month.
Yep.
Valentine's Day. Make your plans when you're taking your wife out. Okay, make sure you tune in.
Yeah.
Actually, we're on in the afternoon, so you can listen to the game, then take her out to dinner that night, okay?
Yeah, I always remember mid-February, Husker baseball. That's kind of when it's going to be back on the airwaves. So I'm super pumped for you, Nick. I know how much you love Husker baseball. You're a baseball guy. I can't wait to listen to you and Ben. Yeah, I mean, we're all still thinking and praying for Greg Sharp. He was great to me in the few weeks I was there with him at the university, and still checked in on me after. And I've definitely been praying for him in his battle. And yeah, David Gustafson, I don't know if he'll remember me or not, but a couple times me and him would do a show when Chris Schmidt was out when I was there in Lincoln, or him and Schmidt would co-host together. So yeah, absolutely looking forward to your opportunity to call it Husker Baseball, Nick. I know you're going to kill it.
I appreciate that. I can't wait to do that, but we'll still be doing this as well. So
that's right.
Don't go anywhere. Don't think I'm going to forget about this either. Scheduling our sessions might be a little bit
more sporadic.
Yeah. They might be a little more hectic, but okay. I guess we got to get to this. So a week ago we were
10
talking about.
Here we go.
I know we delayed it as much as we could. We were talking about are we ready to look at that 2-game losing streak where Nebraska, they get beat by Iowa in a game that they should have won. Okay, it didn't happen. Then they get throttled by Purdue, which Purdue's a great basketball program. Purdue's team this year is a very good team, and Purdue they present matchup issues for Nebraska that you almost just have to kind of live with if you're looking at it good on good, and just hoping that maybe they're not on their game and Nebraska really is. And that wasn't the case in West Lafayette. We weren't, and I know you weren't, I wasn't ready to hit the panic button yet. There was a great opportunity for Nebraska with that 20-game home court winning streak to host Rutgers and then to go on the road to College Park, Maryland, and take on the Maryland Terrapins that the Huskers did just moments ago. A great opportunity to get back on the winning side of things. And I thought this week served two purposes. You get the get right moment, if you will, at home against a beatable Rutgers team. Then you have a chance to get that first road victory in conference play much earlier than you did the previous year, where Nebraska, they won back-to-back road games, but those were their last two road games, Indiana and Michigan, to wrap up the season. Well, if you're watching, if you're listening, you know neither of which happened for Nebraska. They got beat at home, so that winning streak comes to an end, and then they go on the road and they lose a tough one to Maryland. There's takeaways from both games, but all of a sudden, TJ, for the first time in about 3 years, I have no problem saying this, we're seeing this basketball team in a slide, in a funk, in a prolonged losing streak that you just did not see with these Fred Hoiberg teams in the last 3 years. The one thing I mentioned last week when we talked is this is where I think Fred's demeanor, Fred's even-keeledness, if that's a word, really serves this team well. There's not the too high, the too low. There's just always staying right there, which is obviously a great place to be. And here we are now talking about Nebraska's prolonged losing streak in a slide, in a funk. And the first thing that I think of that comes to mind is turnovers and the defense. And the defense is, I still think, at the end of all this thing, if Nebraska finds themselves into the conversation of the NCAA tournament, it's going to be because of their defense. But that is starting to worry me. So are you panicked yet, TJ Henning?
I am not panicked yet. We'll see what happens after Wednesday night, 8 o'clock against USC at home, when you finally get the student section back, which crazy to think, I don't think they've had the student section since that Indiana game back in mid-December. Obviously with that trip out to Hawaii. But yeah, things have not played out well this week for Nebraska basketball. I thought they would go 1-1, Nick. I thought they would get the get-right game at home against Rutgers, a very talented Rutgers team, but seemed to have underachieved so far. And then I wasn't very confident about getting the win today at Maryland. Although, gosh, played well enough to win, but also played bad enough to lose. The defense has really fallen off a cliff the last 4 games. And obviously some of that is just you're playing better competition. Like you're not playing the bye games in the non-con, but the 3-point percentage defense, that was an issue for this team last year. And I was looking back at the stats for it last year. You know, they ranked I think 305th in that department last year at 363. Right now they rank 358th. So there's only 4 teams worse than them in the country in that. The first 14 games this year, Nebraska, 4 times they allowed double-digit threes. Last 4 games, all double-digit threes, and some of them were really high, right? Like 19 and 17 against Purdue, Iowa. So, and again today, I thought still they had great crisp rotations when they did double, but then, Maryland just made shots, and then when they didn't, Maryland was making shots. So I think hopefully you can get right again with the USC game, with the student section being back there. But yeah, I thought Nebraska would go 1-1 this week. Going 0-2 hurts. I'm going to do a deep dive on this a little later, but I'm noticing a trend here with Fred Hoiberg at Nebraska. January is not a good month. I believe his first year he won 0 games. Next year won 1 game in January. After that, won 0. And then the Sam Griesel, Derek Walker team only won 2 games in January. And then last year's team won 3 games in January. And so far, this team has only won 1 game this in January. And you got 3 more opportunities. But at Wisconsin, home Illinois, those will not be easy. So if this follows what's happened, then they really bounce back in February. But you can't bank on that either. And the Big Ten is a bear. So team's got a lot to improve on and work on. And I mean, did you think Nebraska might go 1-1 this week as well?
At the very least, yeah. Yeah. And this is where until they show that they can be knocked off at home. I mean, 20 games in a row is 20 games in a row. And so you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. And that was, we talked about this last week, TJ, that was a Rutgers team that they possessed some things. Dylan Harper is a great player. Ace Bailey is a great player. There were things that they brought into the equation that I think worried you, but for whatever reason, Rutgers was unable to really get things going. And there were just things about their play where I think you would watch them and think, why is this team not better? And I was listening to Kent and Jake talking about this in the pregame on Thursday. And their broadcast team that covers Rutgers felt very confident that this team is on the verge of playing their best basketball, and they're going to be a bear down the stretch. And that very well could be. I mean, you watch what they do have. Those 2 freshmen are one thing, but they've got some other guys that can contribute. They've got some size and some bruisers in the paint there. But then you feel, okay, was it just bad timing for Nebraska? They catch Rutgers as they're starting to get things right? Maybe. But if this is a team that's going to be an NCAA tournament team, which I think I'm still there. I think I'm still there. But I was 2 weeks ago, so I'm not going to get I'm not going to get dramatically different on my outlook for this team. That shouldn't matter. You're at home. You're in a position to beat a team. You're in a position. It wasn't like Rutgers blew their doors off. And the thing that Fred talked about between Harper and Bailey is those guys are going to get their shots and those guys are going to get their buckets. And that cannot define the result. That cannot all of a sudden shake Nebraska to its core and get them out of character. And I thought at times it did, especially is Dylan Harper. There were moments in that game. First of all, I'm very, very I'm nervous for him when he's going to the free throw line. His little routine where he's just kind of fidgety and he has to walk back to the top of the key. Then he has to walk back to the free throw line. I mean, I get it. That's his routine and everything. But there were moments when he would make a big basket. And it was exactly what Fred talked about the day before in the press conference of something that you felt like you defended very well. And the guy just made a better play or the guy just got a really good shot off, even though it was contested. And if you watch Nebraska's subsequent offensive possession, it was kind of helter-skelter. Yeah. It was kind of disorganized. And it wasn't that type of offense all night, but in those moments when either one of those guys would make a big hoop, it was the exact same thing that Fred talked about the day before of we can't let that get into our heads. And yet at times in the game, it seemed like it did.
Yeah. I remember at one point turning to my wife who's sitting next to me at the game. I was like, we can't outscore these guys. We just can't keep trading buckets with this Rutgers team.
Right.
And they got to 82 points, which is, Nebraska averages, I believe, 77. So they got enough points. They gave up the points in the paint and the 3-point line, and you can't do both. And Nebraska's defense is susceptible to 3-pointer, but they gave up 40 points that night in the paint to Rutgers, and you just can't give up both. And as confident as I was going into that game, I also knew, okay, there are 2 NBA guys on this team that can just they can will their team to win. And earlier that week, ESPN put out their mock draft, and Dylan Harper was number 2, Ace Bailey was number 3. So if you got the number 2, number 3 pick on your team, you always feel like you got a shot. And
Yeah.
those guys, they played like NBA guys. I mean, Ace Bailey was everywhere that first half, and then Dylan Harper took over that second half, especially late. Like we sent that double team, he just split it immediately and got to the hoop and finished. Yeah, the way he could finish at the rim was impressive, and the way Ace Bailey could just float and get to where he needed to was really impressive. Although he clearly traveled at the end.
Oh yeah,
at the end of the first half and at the end of the second, he's got 6 steps at the end of the second half. They didn't. But I digress.
He's got Nebraska, some long legs, but yes, I'm with you.
But Nebraska had plenty of other chances to make that happen. And as far as regards to today's game, a lot of interesting like subplots to maybe take away as we look forward to the next game. Braxton Mia only 4 total minutes today. I gotta say, didn't hate that. Like
Andrew Morgan
to me has always
spot.
Been. Yeah, he's kind of always been the guy I want playing more minutes, and I didn't care if he started or not, but as long as he gets more minutes, is in crunch time. He was great today. Burke had a nice bounce back game today. Yep. I mean, he can't go scoreless against Rutgers. You need production from him. Aaron Eulis, I was impressed by him. He didn't play at all that second half against Rutgers, and today he set a career high in 10 assists. So impressed by him staying ready. The bench guys kept him in, but another slow start today. Those 7 turnovers in the first 10 minutes just really come back to haunt you when you're trying to make a comeback like that on the road. And not really a tough environment. Like, man, Nick, like growing up, besides Husker basketball, like the Juan Dixon, Steve Blake, Chris Wilcox teams of Maryland, like I loved watching those teams. Like that place was on fire. But today, Jake Mueller, I think said pregame only like 4,000 people, 5,000 people there. In a place that holds 17,000. I don't know if they're just all getting ready for the Ravens game tonight or what, but like that was surprising to see that. So it wasn't like it was the toughest environment to go play in today. And Nebraska just had their chances. Juwan continues to struggle from 2-point, finishing around the rim.
And he did a better job of that against Rutgers. That's why I was hoping that I had said this on Sports Nightly that I felt if he is inserting himself not only early in that game, but he's seeing buckets early in that game, that would go a long way. And you saw he was able to get very active early on. His athleticism and his ability to insert himself into the offense next to Bryce, to me, is a huge factor for this team. He did that. You're right. That was a big part of what was missing early in this game for Nebraska to outpace Maryland, because they were just hanging around the whole time. But you mentioned the turnovers in the first 10, and then let me jump to where Nebraska, hey, they're down by 9. It looks like, okay, this thing is over. It's just only going to get uglier. And then they put themselves back in a position to either tie the game up or even take the lead. It wasn't as many turnovers as we've seen Nebraska have in some of these losses, but they came at horrific moments of this game. We mentioned the first 10 minutes of the game, but then with 28 seconds to go, you're looking to either tie or take the lead, and you get a look in the corner. You're trying to reset it, reverse, and probably find a nice look on that reverse. Sloppy pass, no attention to detail there, and that ball gets intercepted, and then you get a situation where Maryland's going to the line, even though they only go 1 of 2 there, the charity stripe. You're still 3-point game. You have a chance to get something off. I didn't like the look that they got either. And here's the other question. This is not me trying to second guess Fred Hoiberg. Just given the way that the offense, again, was disjointed in a lot of this game.
Yeah.
Do you take the time out there and try to design something to have plan B or even C, a look off of a look, when you know that if you're playing to tie it right then and there, which Nebraska clearly was, you're playing to tie it right then and there. Do you take the time out and try to find something better? Because the shot that they eventually got off was not the shot, obviously, that you want.
No, but it almost went in. I mean, it rolled around that rim. But yeah, Fred Hoiberg said so much so after the radio show that he or the post-game radio show with Kent and Jake, that he wishes he would have taken that timeout. And I think a lot of us feel that way. And I didn't mind with him not taking it initially, because then you don't give Maryland a chance to like decide like, okay, in that timeout, we're just going to go send a double right away, or we'll do a delayed double, or maybe because at that point they didn't seem like they were going to plan to foul Nebraska being up 3. So then maybe in that timeout they decide, okay, we're going to foul when we get a chance to. But when that first initial look didn't happen for Nebraska, that's when I would have called the timeout, since that first section to get open. And then they're just scrambling, and they're clearly just trying to get a 3. They're not even looking to get to the rim with however many seconds were left. So, yeah, I mean, if the head coach is saying as much, then I would have called a timeout there too, Nick.
I want to go back to Nebraska defending the perimeter, and you talked about some of the previous games, and then in this game today, Nebraska allowed 40% beyond the arc, and that's a growing trend. When you watch this team defensively, I was wrong early in the season where I thought, and now mind you, I was watching a lot of Creighton as well, getting ready for that matchup between Nebraska and Creighton.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that there are two things when I think about Creighton here. If you give me a moment here to kind of explain where I'm going with this.
Okay.
I knew Creighton would be a shell of themselves from the standpoint of losing a type of player, or even players too, because I definitely want to make sure that I put Trey Alexander in this as well. Mm-hmm. But Baylor Shireman, what he could do from a bailout standpoint, he could be ice cold in a half and then just sizzle in another one. And what Creighton was able to do always could feed off of that. Athleticism-wise, yeah, you lose something out of Trey. But when they had Pop Isaacs in the lineup, now this is, again, when I was watching them nightly when they were playing, they came across as a much more athletic team than they were the previous year. And so what you lose in having a guy that can go off for 20 to 30 at night in Baylor Shireman, and even having a guy like Trey Alexander who could probably give you something similar, I thought that they made up for it in their transition game and what they could generate from that standpoint. Obviously, they lose Pop Isaacs, and Creighton's a weird team, man. They go on the road to beat UConn yesterday. I mean, that is a team that they are must watch from the standpoint if you just do not know what is going to happen on a given night with them. I thought watching them early in the season, I'm watching Nebraska, I'm like, man, Nebraska's just not very athletic. They are just not very athletic. But then I start watching them a little bit more, and I'm watching the way that they defend. And this was early in the season, and this was also in the perimeter game of how they defended the three-point line. And their rotations, their ability to communicate and go back to that Creighton matchup, perfect example of getting down to the paint to defend Kalkbrenner, but their recovery to get out. Now, Creighton had looks. Don't get me wrong. There were a lot of shots that were not going down for Creighton, but the ability to defend the post and then be able to recover, get out there, and close out some shots, it made me think I was mislabeling them as it's not that they're not athletic. They don't necessarily have that explosive guy off the dribble like a bunch of them. I think Bryce is one of those guys. Juwan is extremely athletic, gifted athlete offensively too. But as a defensive unit, collectively, when they had it going, they look like a very athletic defensive team, especially the way that they rotate inside and out on the perimeter game to the post. That is, I don't know what's happening there, but their closeout and when they do have to try to recover from the post to the perimeter seems a step or two slower than it was. And it's just very fascinating to me. I don't know what is leading to that because a lot of it is the same personnel that I've seen doing it very well before. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know if you're seeing that as well, but it just seems like it's a step or two slower than what it was in December.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I remember after that UCLA game where UCLA, I think, went like 4 for 22 from three. Mm-hmm. Buddy texted me like, man,
that's more of a recent example. Absolutely. Yeah.
This defense, like, I like what they're doing right now. And I was like, yeah, but not so much lately. Have we seen those type of texts the last 4 games? Yeah. Again, I just wonder if it goes up to like a regression to the mean, like you're playing better competition. Yeah. So like these guys are going to be better shooters, going to be more athletic. And, Rutgers was more athletic than Nebraska the other night. And I would say probably the same today. So yeah, I agree with you a lot, Nick. I mean, today Nebraska did great on their NBA guy, Derek Queen. Like, I think he's projected to go right outside the lottery, like 16th. Yes. They held him to 0 points. Kept him in check, but obviously they still got talented guys like that Belmont.
Yeah, he only got off 4 shots. In this game. He was 0 for 4 in this game.
So it's kind of like, again, like they took away the big man. They took away Kalkbrenner, but Maryland was still able to make them pay by hitting double-digit threes, or Creighton wasn't able to that game. A lot of talk today about the multiple point guard lineup usage. You had Wooster and Ulis out there at the same time, even Sam Hoiberg and Bryce Williams. Those are kind of all your point guards. I just ultimately, like, at times it seemed to work, but I was like, is it really because of those guys? Or I remember once the season hit that deep three and like nobody was guarding Raleigh Worcester, like out on like they're just, please let him shoot it.
Right.
So just the lack of shooting that Worcester and Euless provide, I just still think, they only scored 66 points today where they scored 16 more the previous game. I don't know if that's still a recipe for success going forward, is playing both those guys out there. But Euless seemed to have a better handle of the ball today than Worcester did, I thought.
And I think I'm glad you brought that part up, because I think if I'm in that post-game press conference, or if I'm talking to Fred Hoiberg this week, I'm asking, is the reason behind that to try to remedy the turnover situation offensively? Having two ball handlers in there and being able to, guys that are comfortable, even when maybe they're throwing different defensive looks, or they're trying to be more aggressive, they're trying to trap you, different things like that, where guys are going to be a little bit more confident with the basketball, not only in their hands, but also being able to find the angles that they need to get out of trouble. Is that a reason that you're seeing some of those ball handlers in there, because they're trying to cut down on the turnovers? Because that, to me, is going to be damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you have guys that are not consistent scorers, when you need to be able to make up some type of disparity on that scoreboard, okay, it's great to have a ball handler in there and be able to maximize your possessions. But TJ, if you're maximizing those possessions by not turning the basketball over, that shot clock comes to an end. And if you're not getting off a quality look, or you're not getting guys that can find get the basketball in the hoop, then we've got a problem. So I can understand the thinking behind that, but you also have to make sure you're putting guys that have that ability to take advantage of quality possessions and be able to hit shots. And that's not happening as much as it needs to be.
Yeah. If you're Fred Hoiberg, Nick, Andrew Morgan started that second half there. To me, it's more who plays more, not who starts. But sometimes I think this team struggles with getting off to a good start, and you're just not getting anything offensively from me unless it's dunks. Do you look at starting Morgan over Mia the next game at the 5?
I do. I absolutely do. And remember, we saw this not with the front court, but we saw this in the back court at times with C.J. Wilcher, where if he would be in the starting lineup and he was kind of struggling, and then so they would all of a sudden, hey, who is giving us our best spark off the bench? Let's maybe put him in the lineup. Maybe he starts. C.J. Wilcher comes off the bench, starts being a contributor. And then all of a sudden you see the role last year where C.J. Wilcher is coming off the bench. He's a much more impactful type player. He can start because he's done that before, but he's giving you that contribution off the bench. I wonder, and I'm not trying to, I know this is an apples oranges conversation because of what they want Braxton Mia to do compared to a guard like C.J. Wilcher was. But I look at that emphasis of why Fred would make some of those lineup changes for that exact reason. This is an offense that's going to have limitations. We can't just hope that we're going to find that offense in the second half. So if you can get out to a run, especially at home, TJ, this is where that whole, you bring up the student section being back, that whole environment at Pinnacle Bank Arena. That is one of those rare places in college basketball that if you get off to one of those runs early on, it can become an avalanche for the other team, to where try as they might, they are not going to be able to overcome the entire deficit. I mean, I'm not trying to compare Pinnacle Bank Arena to Fog Allen Fieldhouse, but when we would see Kansas go on those types of runs in a building like that, where it would just come on top of those opponents were essentially dead in the water in the first 10 minutes. Nebraska in that environment has that type of ability to at least put Nebraska in a position to where a team is really struggling and putting forth a lot of effort to try to get back in the game, that you would like to think that by the time they get to those final 5 minutes of that final media timeout, that they're going to be spent and Nebraska's going to be in a great position to win a basketball game.
Yeah. Gosh, you bring back like me thinking of great memories at PBA, went off to great starts. And obviously Gnosis Sunday comes to the top of my mind, and Teran Petaway hits that 3 to make it 10-3. And it's, first 4 minutes, and that place just goes absolutely bonkers. And for the rest of the game, the crowd the other night at Rutgers, for how great it was without the student section for that UCLA game, it just didn't match it at all. I don't know if it was because 8:00 on a weeknight, cold out, but man, for some reason that crowd just was not the same at all for the UCLA compared to Rutgers. But yeah, Nebraska definitely has that advantage that they can use and at their disposal of the crowd, and hopefully the student section will bring it Wednesday night. But 8:00 tip.
To your point, though, that's why I think you're looking at a guy like Andrew Morgan, who is giving you a little offensive spark for a team that is hitting a lull right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get this thing back on the right track, get this team back to where they're considered to be an NCAA tournament type team, you're in a desperate situation. There's no question against USC that Nebraska has to win this basketball game, because you mentioned the other two games they have to wrap up this month, and those are two very, very good basketball teams between Wisconsin and Illinois. I know you get Illinois at home, but come on. It's still a very good team. If Rutgers can come into Lincoln and pull off the win, Illinois sure as hell could do it as well. That you've got to put yourself in a position to take care of those opportunities, and those opportunities that present themselves, you have to put your best foot forward. And right now, I do think that is valuing offense in that lineup early on than it is defense. I understand Braxton Mia can defend the rim. He can give you that type of opportunity defensively to try to turn teams away. But when they're hitting the three ball at the clip the teams are right now, that to me is not the biggest problem for Nebraska defensively right now. And that's the one thing that Braxton Mia can do. So if teams are not even hurting you that way, they're hurting you in other ways. What is his value over a guy that can give you a scoring surge like Andrew Morgan can?
Yeah, I guess Fred will just have to weigh the whole starting the game versus, bringing that instant offense off the bench like you can with Esiason or with Andrew Morgan, and see what he thinks is better. I mean, Mia, that's probably the fewest minutes he's played all season.
Mm-hmm.
And, you wonder how he would handle that also within getting demoted to the bench. I still obviously think there can be a role for this guy, especially when you play in the Big Ten and there are a lot of big men. But I wouldn't be opposed if that's something he's thinking about wanting to try the next game.
Andrew Morgan reminds me of a rink light. And when I think
the
of
3-point,
And when I think of where Nebraska thrived at home and in some of those big games they're down the stretch, is because they had their big man actively contributing offensively. What Rink Mass gave you defensively was a plus.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you wanted them to get some rebounds, but more than anything, you needed the points out of him. And I'm not trying to put all that on Andrew Morgan, okay? Bryce Williams has still got to be Bryce Williams. We just talked about Juwan Gary. Juwan Gary just needs to, inside the arc, needs to be that type of guy, that explosive type player, and be able to finish. That is the emphasis right now. And then if you can throw in a big man like Andrew Morgan that has, I think, some pretty savvy post moves, has got decent range inside the arc, can give you some different looks, that's the offense that, again, no one's asking Nebraska to score 85 points, but that's the offense that you can survive and win the games you should win in this league. I think it comes down to right now, you've got to value that, because I'll go back to this. The one thing that I think that Nebraska seems to be really almost scared of their own shadow when it comes to the turnovers. So I just think there are personnel decisions to really try to minimize the turnovers, and I can understand that. But I go back to the big question. If you're minimizing those turnovers, are you still getting absolutely most of those possessions out of those possessions? And the answer right now is no, they're not. They're missing shots. The offense, again, is kind of disjointed. So who can give you that spark? Why bring them off the bench when you can maybe get that right out of the gate, put a team on its heels early on, especially when you're at home, and then go from there, and hopefully everything will kind of feed off of that.
Yeah, I mean, Morgan and Burke were the transfers I was most excited about, because, those to me were the guys who were like, okay, how can we replace Rink? And it was through those two guys where we knew Mia was just kind of be the lob and defender. And Morgan might be a better finisher around the rim than Rink. I'd have to look at those numbers, but obviously he's not the passer with the assists or the 3-point shooter he is, but he brought the ball up a lot today during that Maryland press, which Rink would do in the past. So, and then Burke is a big X factor. Like, I know he's leading the team in rebounding, and you just got to make sure that you're also getting the points from him, because that's a big part of this Nebraska offense right now as they search for more points in a deep Big Ten.
This is a pivotal week. I mean, as much as I can say it's a must win, it is. You don't ever want to put a must win towards the end of January, but that's where we are with Nebraska right now, at a 4-game losing streak, and now experiencing their first loss in 21 games at home. It's the Rutgers. So this is going to be an interesting group to watch come Wednesday night when the Trojans come to town. As we mentioned, Wisconsin and then Illinois to wrap up the month of January. But Nebraska losing today to Maryland. It was an interesting one. It looked like it might be a blowout there towards the end, but they made it interesting there. Couldn't get the shot off that they wanted. They lose 69-66. So Nebraska is now 12-6 overall, 2-5 in conference play. That's crazy, because Dang, TJ, they were. I remember when they were 2-1 in conference play. We're like, dang, this is looking pretty dang good.
Yeah, 12-2.
Whew, yeah, and we're like, I remember I said they're going to be ranked. The team's going to be ranked. Oh, okay. I got a little overexcited. Speaking of excited, college football wraps up tomorrow night. The national championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame. I like this matchup for a few different reasons, but I'm trying to convince myself that this will be an entertaining game, that this will be a game that delivers, because the college football playoff to this point, TJ, has been a mix when it comes to great competitive games compared to ones that were over in the second quarter. Pretty much every game in the first round was extremely lopsided, thank God. In the quarters, we got ASU and Texas. That was a very fun game on New Year's Day. And then the semifinals and what we kind of saw between then was good. 8.5 is what Vegas has Ohio State favored by. I understand it. I think you should pick Ohio State to win the game if you're looking at it from the rosters and the way that these two teams play. But as we know in college football, especially now with the transfer portal, we want to see the parity. We want to see everything that the numbers tell us doesn't necessarily always indicate the outcome that will be. I still think Ohio State wins this game, but I think there is something to Notre Dame and what they've been doing lately. This is a beat-up team. They've battled that all year. But I was bringing this up last week, and if I'm to at least get you excited about this particular matchup here, remember when Nebraska had a chance to pull the major upset in Columbus, Ohio? There was something that the quarterback for Nebraska he was doing that had been a little bit different than what he had done all season long, and that was when stuff was breaking down. Oh, you guys don't think I can run? Well, here I go. And he would extend drives. He would get you a first down. He would get you 8 yards here and there. There's just something about Riley Leonard that is not the most skilled guy that you want throwing the ball 40 times a game. Notre Dame doesn't go downfield as much as other teams that Ohio State has gone up against, but they can, and they have lately been going downfield a little bit more. But the Riley Leonard toughness, ability to run, dual threat type of guy, I think can keep this thing a little more interesting, because Notre Dame wants to run the football and then they want to use their perimeter passing game. That's what they want to do. Mm-hmm. I'm encouraged that they have gone downfield a little bit more. I know that sometimes the competition will dictate what you can do when it comes to that and what your quarterback can do. You don't want to put him in a position where he's making mistake after mistake, because Notre Dame, to win this game, they have got to win the turnover battle. If it's even 2-1, I think they lose this game. But if they're able to be clean and still take some shots downfield, and then Riley Leonard's athleticism can help him out a little bit, maybe this offense can do something. But TJ, the reason I'm taking Ohio State to win this game, and I got them winning 37-24, is because, and he said it after I had already mentioned this last week. So I'm not taking something straight out of him. I think he heard me say this. Guy only had 4 yards in the semifinal. He was a non-factor. Jeremiah Smith is mad. Jeremiah Smith is going Trey Palmer. Jeremiah Smith will wake up tomorrow morning pissed off. And you know what? For a true freshman, most times I would say, okay, good luck with that, pup. Jeremiah Smith can actually do something about it. That dude is amazing. And the fact that he was bottled up in that semifinal game against Texas, he will erupt. We watched it in the Oregon game, and I think we're going to watch it tomorrow night. He will be the difference. I know, whoa, that's a hot take right there. He's that good. He is that good. And you know what? Will Howard hasn't been bad. Will Howard will get him the football, and I think that offense, the Ohio State offense, just going to be too much.
I thought you were going to bring up the Lou Holtz video. I thought you were going to bring up what he said about Ryan Day. We got that weird beef between those two.
I mean, they're a soft football team, TJ. You tell me about Ryan Day. That's a soft football team right there. And I'll tell you what, there's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
There was something like that.
Yeah, that's half the reason I brought Lou Holtz up, is hoping you would pull out that impression. So
I can never resist. I can't resist.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. A lot of that stuff I completely agree with you. I think last week when we talked about this and that line had come out, think it was 8.5 or 9.5.
Yeah.
At the time, I was like, oh, I'm going to take Notre Dame with the points. But as I've thought about it more, I was like, if I had to play that game, I would probably lay the points with Ohio State instead. I think Ohio State is just so much more talented than Notre Dame. So I think they'll win. I'll be rooting for Notre Dame, like not that hard.
I'm too.
I always like the underdog, and my brother-in-law, he got his PhD from Notre Dame, so I visited that campus like 3 or 4 times. It's awesome. Like if you ever get a chance to go, South Bend, the town is okay, but the campus is immaculate, and I would definitely recommend people going to check out, the Gold Dome, the Grotto, Touchdown Jesus. I caught a hockey game there once. I think I remember telling you that when we worked together back there at 590. Some things that stand out to me, though, are definitely the 2 quarterbacks. Obviously, both those guys coming from teams who are less talented, but now going to teams that are more talented, right? Will Howard from K-State to Ohio State, Riley Leonard from Duke to Notre Dame. Those guys not having to do as much as they did at the previous schools now can just kind of dish it out to who they need to. You mentioned the Nebraska game plan for how to beat Ohio State. I kind of think about for Notre Dame, maybe looking at that Michigan-Ohio State game and watching how Michigan was able to beat them, because, Michigan just did not have an offense this year. They did not have a passing game. And Riley Leonard, his strength is more running the ball, right? And you saw when he got hurt, their backup, he was able to kind of move things along with his throwing arm. But to me, if I was Notre Dame, I would watch that game and know, like, we just got to muck this thing up. We got to win ball control. We got to win the turnovers, like you mentioned. And we got to hope that guys like Jeremiah Love, the Notre Dame running back, who I know is not at full strength, but man, that 2-yard run he had against Texas, like I can still picture that run in my mind. Like I know it was only 2 yards, but the will of that guy to get in the end zone for that 2 yards was really impressive. That was a great run. So yeah, I don't see Notre Dame being able to do it, but I'll definitely be rooting for them to beat it over Ohio State, because Ryan Day says it's Ohio versus everybody. That's the way it's always been and always has been. So yeah, no, thank you. Ohio State fans, they're the most, they haven't won the most national championships, but they have the all-time winning percentage, I believe, in college football. So those fans win all the time, yet it seems like all they do is complain. And I just, come on, you guys win all the time.
Is there, I know sometimes this can be the Nebraska fan in us, or showing conference pride that we need to root for the Big Ten. I would say this, if you're taking that route, you could do this, though, TJ. If Ohio State wins, this is where you can just emotionally hedge. You can take Notre Dame, like emotionally you want them to win, but then you've got the fallback of Ohio State. If they do win, you could say, well, at least we can say that the team I rooted for had a chance and really could have beat the national champion in Columbus, Ohio. So if you're Matt Rule, there's maybe a little extra gravy on the recruiting pitch there too, of like, yeah, do you see that team playing the national championship? We're right there with them. I mean, don't tell me about talent, man. I mean, come on, we got that. We were right there with what the so-called best team in the nation is. So you could, that's a good little fallback right there.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It'd be a little crazy if I think if recruits pick Nebraska solely on that, Nick. I'd be a little surprised. I actually had a friend who went to that Nebraska Ohio State game, and he said like he couldn't believe how much better Nebraska's facilities were than Ohio State's. Yeah. And he's like, kids care about winning and getting to the NFL. And that's definitely what Ohio State football does right now.
They don't care about the uniforms anymore either. Remember when that was a thing? Like, the more alternative uniforms you have, the better chance you have of getting that 5-star recruit. Yeah. The things we thought that mattered in recruiting. It's just so simple, really. I mean, it's right in front of us. It's like win a lot of games and show a path to the NFL. Boy, I bet you're going to win a lot of those recruiting battles if you just are able to present that.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, TJ, always fun with you, my man. Have a great rest of your week, or whatever's left of your Sunday, and we will do this next week. So you've got, did you give me a score for tomorrow? I'm taking Ohio State 34-27. So I actually do have Notre Dame covering.
I will go 30-17 Ohio State.
Okay. Oh, yeah. And you're probably going to be right. I think I'm throwing that score out there because I want to believe that I will be engaged in this for all 4 quarters. I just want that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Hey, Nick, I'm about to do something that will make you happy. We are about to take our Christmas tree down today. So it's finally happening. Mark it down, January 19th.
You know what I did on Wednesday afternoon? Because it's pretty nice out. The Christmas lights actually came down.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. See, we haven't turned them on since January 2nd, so they haven't been on, but they've been out there. I got up on the ladder. I Clark Griswold that, and I took them down. They're all down. So there is absolutely zero remnants of anything Christmas right now. We are just all about 2025.
Well, I just want to let you know, because I know you know.
I'm proud of you.
You know, there's a certain point it's got to be done, but I still like to see the lights.
Yeah, and he didn't quite reach January 20th. You're a day before that. That's huge.
Yeah,
okay, once you start getting past January 20th and you got your Christmas stuff up, then we got to start wondering if there needs to be some type of intervention.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. TJ, be well. Have a great week. We will do this again next week.
All right. See you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Don't forget to check out the Nick Handley Show, the Nick Handley Podcast on Husker Max, the YouTube channel for Husker Max. And, of course, you can also stay up to date with everything on the show. Follow me on Twitter at Nick Handley OMA. For TJ, I'm Nick. You've been watching and listening to the Nick Handley Show. We'll talk to you next week.